Before we begin, there is one powerful truth that most people never hear about avoidant attachment. The words "I love you" are often seen as the ultimate expression of closeness, the phrase that melts walls, heals distance, and brings two people together. Yet for many avoidants, those three words do not always create the emotional reaction people expect. In some cases, they can even trigger discomfort, pressure, or an urge to pull away. That sounds completely backwards. After all, if love is what everyone wants, why would an avoidant respond differently? The answer lies deep beneath the surface, in a part of avoidant psychology that most people never fully understand. While many assume avoidants are cold, detached, or emotionally unavailable, research on attachment patterns paints a very different picture. Avoidants often feel far more than they show. They simply learned, often very early in life, that depending on others can feel risky, overwhelming, or unsafe. Because of this, they become experts at hiding needs, suppressing emotions, and maintaining control. The result is a personality that may appear distant on the outside, while carrying a complex emotional world underneath. This is where things become fascinating. The words that touch an avoidant the deepest are often not the words most people focus on. In fact, there are three simple words that can reach places inside an avoidant that endless reassurance, emotional chasing, and even repeated declarations of love sometimes cannot reach. These words speak directly to their hidden fears. They lower defenses instead of raising them. They create safety instead of pressure. And perhaps most surprisingly, they address emotional needs that many avoidants rarely admit, even to themselves. Throughout this video, we are going to uncover why these three words carry such powerful meaning, what they reveal about the avoidant mind, and why understanding them can completely change the way people view avoidant attachment. You will learn why many avoidants react differently to love than other attachment styles, why certain phrases instantly make them feel trapped while others help them feel understood, and how their deepest emotional struggles are often invisible to the people around them. We will also explore lesser-known psychological patterns that explain why avoidants sometimes seem close one moment and distant the next, why they value independence so intensely, and why their behavior is often driven by fear rather than a lack of care. As we move through this discussion, a larger picture will begin to emerge, one that challenges many popular beliefs about relationships, intimacy, and emotional connection. The final words on our list may surprise you the most, because they reveal a hidden emotional need that many avoidants spend years trying to protect. Once you understand it, their actions can start making sense in ways they never did before. So stay with us until the very end, because each insight builds on the last. And the deeper we go into avoidant psychology, the more these three words will reveal about what truly touches an avoidant heart. If you are interested in psychology, relationships, attachment theory, and the hidden reasons people behave the way they do, you are in the right place. Welcome to the channel. Be sure to subscribe and join our growing community so you never miss future videos exploring the fascinating world of human behavior, emotional intelligence, and relationship psychology. Let's begin. One of the biggest misunderstandings about avoidant people is the belief that they do not feel deeply. Many people look at an avoidant's behavior and assume there is a lack of emotion underneath. They see the distance, they see the hesitation, they see the moments when the avoidant pulls back after getting close. From the outside, it can look as if they simply do not care. But psychology tells a very different story. In reality, many avoidants experience strong emotions. The difference is not that they feel less. The difference is that they have learned to manage those feelings in ways that make them less visible. Instead of expressing sadness, they may hide it. Instead of asking for comfort, they may withdraw. Instead of sharing fear, they may become quiet. Over time, this creates the illusion that nothing is happening inside them, when in many cases, quite a lot is happening beneath the surface. This pattern often develops because emotional self-control becomes a survival strategy. Many avoidants learn early in life that vulnerability does not always lead to comfort. Sometimes it leads to disappointment. Sometimes it leads to criticism. Sometimes it leads to feeling ignored. As a result, they begin relying on themselves emotionally. They learn to solve problems alone. They learn to calm themselves alone. They learn to carry emotional burdens without asking for help. The more they practice this pattern, the more natural it becomes. By adulthood, it can seem automatic. Even when they care deeply about someone, their first instinct is often to handle emotions privately rather than share them openly. This is why many avoidants can appear calm during situations that would make other people highly emotional. It is not always because they are unaffected. Often it is because they have become experts at containing their reactions. Their feelings may be intense, but those feelings stay hidden behind carefully built walls. The challenge is that other people usually judge emotions based on visible behavior. When affection is not expressed openly, it can be mistaken for indifference. When vulnerability is not shared, it can be mistaken for emotional emptiness. Yet the reality is usually much more complicated. Another misunderstanding involves the avoidance relationship with independence. Many people assume avoidants value independence because they dislike closeness. But independence is rarely the true goal. Independence is often the tool they use to feel safe. When they rely on themselves, they feel in control. When they maintain personal space, they feel protected. When they handle problems alone, they avoid the risk of disappointment. This does not mean they never want connection. It means they often struggle with the vulnerability that connection requires. That distinction is important because it changes the entire way we understand avoidant behavior. Most avoidants are not running from love itself. They are running from the fear that can come with love. Love creates emotional exposure. Love creates expectations. Love creates responsibility. Love creates the possibility of loss. For someone who has spent years protecting themselves emotionally, these experiences can feel overwhelming. The closer the relationship becomes, the more vulnerable they feel. The more vulnerable they feel, the stronger their protective instincts become. This is where emotional pressure enters the picture. Emotional pressure affects avoidance in a unique way. What feels like reassurance to one person can feel like pressure to another. What feels like affection to one person can feel like obligation to another. Repeated demands for emotional expression, constant requests for reassurance, or expectations of immediate vulnerability can activate an avoidance defenses. Instead of feeling closer, they may feel trapped. Instead of feeling understood, they may feel overwhelmed. Instead of moving forward, they may pull back. This reaction often confuses the people around them. Someone may think, I am giving more love. Why are they becoming more distant? The answer lies in the avoidance internal experience. When emotional intensity increases too quickly, their nervous system may interpret it as a threat to their autonomy. Their instinct is not necessarily to reject the relationship. Their instinct is to regain a sense of emotional balance. Unfortunately, that often looks like distance. This is why love itself can sometimes feel overwhelming rather than comforting. Society teaches people that love is always experienced as warmth, safety, and happiness. But for an avoidant, love can also trigger fears that have been hidden for years. The deeper the connection becomes, the greater the possibility of emotional dependency. The greater the dependency, the greater the risk of disappointment, loss, or feeling trapped. These fears operate quietly in the background, influencing behavior in ways even the avoidant may not fully understand. To truly understand the three words that touch an avoidant deeper than love, we first need to understand what an avoidant is actually protecting. Most people assume they are protecting their freedom. Others assume they are protecting their independence. While those things matter, there is something even deeper underneath. At the core of many avoidant behaviors is an attempt to protect emotional safety. One of the strongest fears many avoidants carry is the fear of losing autonomy. Autonomy means having the freedom to make choices, maintain personal boundaries, and remain connected to one's own identity. For avoidants, autonomy is closely connected to emotional security. The moment they feel that their freedom is threatened, anxiety can begin to appear. This fear is not always rational. It is often rooted in past experiences and old emotional patterns, yet it can feel incredibly real. Another fear involves emotional engulfment. This is a term psychologists use to describe the fear of being consumed by a relationship. Many avoidants worry that closeness will eventually erase their independence. They fear becoming responsible for someone else's emotions. They fear losing space to think, breathe, and function as individuals. They fear a future where every decision must revolve around another person's needs. Even when these fears are exaggerated, they can still influence behavior powerfully. The fear of disappointing others also plays a significant role. Many avoidants carry an unspoken belief that they will eventually fail to meet emotional expectations. Deep down, they may worry that they cannot provide enough reassurance, enough vulnerability, or enough emotional availability. Instead of risking disappointment later, they sometimes create distance earlier. It becomes a way of avoiding feelings of failure. There is also the fear of being depended on too much. While secure individuals often view emotional dependence as a natural part of relationships, avoidants may interpret it differently. Heavy emotional reliance can feel overwhelming. It can feel like a responsibility they are not prepared to carry. The more someone depends on them, the more pressure they may feel. The more pressure they feel, the stronger their urge to create space becomes. Many of these fears can be traced back to childhood experiences. Not every avoidant has the same history, but common patterns often appear. Emotional needs may have been minimized. Vulnerability may not have been encouraged. Independence may have been rewarded while emotional expression was ignored. Over time, the child learns a powerful lesson. Relying on others feels uncertain. Relying on yourself feels safer. That lesson can follow them into adulthood, shaping relationships for years. This is why the avoidant's greatest need is often misunderstood. Many people think avoidants want distance. They see the withdrawal and assume distance is the goal. But distance is usually a strategy, not a desire. The deeper need is safety. Distance simply becomes one way of creating that safety when emotions feel overwhelming. Safety for an avoidant often comes from feeling accepted without pressure. It comes from knowing they do not have to perform emotionally in order to be valued. It comes from knowing they will not be forced into vulnerability before they are ready. It comes from knowing that their boundaries will be respected rather than challenged. When that kind of safety exists, something remarkable begins to happen. The walls that once seemed permanent start becoming less necessary. This brings us to the first three words that can touch an avoidant deeper than love. I understand you. At first glance, these words may seem simple. They do not sound dramatic. They do not sound romantic. They do not sound powerful. Yet for many avoidants, they can create an emotional impact that runs surprisingly deep. One reason is that avoidants rarely feel fully understood. Their outward behavior often creates misunderstandings. People see the distance but not the fear behind it. People see the silence but not the emotional conflict beneath it. People see the withdrawal but not the internal struggle driving it. As a result, avoidants often feel judged rather than understood. When someone genuinely understands them, their defenses begin to relax. Understanding sends a message that is very different from pressure. Pressure says, change. Understanding says, I see where you're coming from. Pressure creates tension. Understanding creates safety. Many people make the mistake of trying to fix avoidance. They analyze them. They push them. They try to force breakthroughs. They search for ways to change their behavior. While these efforts may come from good intentions, they often reinforce the avoidant's fear of being controlled. Being understood feels different because it does not demand immediate change. It allows them to feel seen without feeling threatened. There is also a profound emotional relief that comes from feeling understood. Human beings have a deep need to be recognized for who they truly are. Avoidants are no different. In fact, because they hide so much of their inner world, being accurately understood can feel especially meaningful. It removes the exhausting need to explain, defend, or justify themselves. This is why understanding often reaches deeper than love. Love can sometimes feel demanding. Love can carry expectations. Love can raise questions about commitment, vulnerability, and emotional responsibility. Understanding feels different. Understanding feels accepting. It communicates that someone is willing to see the person beneath the defenses, rather than simply react to the defenses themselves. From a psychological perspective, understanding reduces the need for self-protection. The nervous system becomes less alert. Emotional walls become less necessary. Trust has room to grow. Connection begins to feel safer. Yet even understanding alone is not enough. Because there is another challenge that many avoidants face. They often process emotions much more slowly than people expect. Their emotional journey rarely follows a straight line. Feelings may take time to surface. Thoughts may take time to organize. Vulnerability may take time to develop. This is why the second set of words can be so powerful. Take your time. For many avoidants, these words feel like a breath of fresh air. They remove urgency. They remove pressure. They communicate patience. Avoidants often need extra time to process emotional experiences. When feelings become intense, their first instinct may be to step back and think. This does not always mean they are losing interest. It often means they are trying to understand what they are feeling. Unfortunately, people around them sometimes interpret this pause as rejection, creating even more pressure. Pressure tends to produce the opposite of the desired result. The more an avoidant feels pushed, the more likely they are to withdraw. The more they withdraw, the more misunderstood they become. It turns into a cycle that leaves both people frustrated. Patience breaks that cycle. Patience communicates trust. It signals that emotional closeness does not have to happen on a strict timetable. It creates room for authentic connection to develop naturally rather than through force. For an avoidant, those simple words can feel incredibly freeing because they communicate something many avoidants rarely experience in relationships: freedom without abandonment, freedom without judgment, freedom without obligation. And that emotional experience can be far more powerful than most people realize. The second set of words that often touches an avoidant more deeply than love is surprisingly simple: take your time. At first, these words may not sound emotional. They do not sound romantic. They do not sound dramatic. Yet for many avoidants, these three can create a feeling that is both rare and powerful. That feeling is relief. One reason these words matter so much is because avoidants often process emotions differently than most people realize. Their emotional world does not always move at the same speed as the people around them. While others may quickly identify feelings, talk about them openly, and seek immediate answers, avoidants often need much longer to understand what is happening inside them. Emotions can feel confusing. Vulnerability can feel uncomfortable. Intense connection can activate old fears that they are not fully aware of. Because of this, their first response is often to slow down. Unfortunately, many people misunderstand this need for time. They assume that if an avoidant is not responding quickly, then they do not care. If they are not opening up immediately, they must be emotionally unavailable. If they need space, they must be losing interest. These assumptions create pressure. That pressure then creates exactly the reaction people are trying to avoid. The more pressure an avoidant feels, the more likely they are to withdraw. The more they withdraw, the more pressure others apply. The more pressure appears, the stronger the urge to create distance becomes. This cycle happens in relationships every day. An avoidant begins feeling overwhelmed. The other person notices the distance. The other person asks for reassurance. The avoidant feels pressured. They pull away even more. The other person becomes anxious. The cycle continues. What many people fail to realize is that avoidants often need space, not because they want less connection, but because they are trying to regulate their emotions. Distance becomes a way to calm their nervous system. It becomes a way to think clearly. It becomes a way to understand feelings that seem overwhelming in the moment. This is why the words "take your time" can feel so meaningful. Those words remove urgency. They remove demands. They remove the feeling of being emotionally cornered. Instead of hearing, "Why aren't you opening up?" the avoidant hears, "You can move at your own pace." Instead of hearing, "You need to figure this out right now," they hear, "There is room for you to process." Instead of feeling trapped, they feel respected. For someone with avoidant tendencies, that difference can be enormous. Many avoidants spend much of their lives feeling misunderstood. People often interpret their need for space as rejection. Their silence is interpreted as indifference. Their caution is interpreted as emotional coldness. But when someone says, "take your time," it communicates something deeper than patience. It communicates trust. It says, "I am not trying to control your process." It says, "I am not demanding that you become someone else." It says, "I respect where you are right now." That kind of message often reaches an avoidant in a way that traditional expressions of love cannot, because patience feels safe. Patience gives them room to breathe. Patience gives them room to think. Patience gives them room to feel. Many avoidants have spent years learning how to suppress emotions. When feelings become intense, they do not automatically move toward connection. They often move toward self-protection. The interesting thing is that self-protection usually becomes stronger when people try to force vulnerability. Think about it for a moment. If someone feels overwhelmed and another person immediately demands answers, openness becomes harder. If someone feels emotionally confused and another person insists on clarity right away, confusion often increases. The same thing happens with avoidance. Pressure rarely creates connection. Pressure creates resistance. This is why patience feels so powerful. Psychologically speaking, the avoidant nervous system is highly sensitive to anything that feels like emotional pressure. Even when the pressure comes from love, it can still trigger defensive reactions. The avoidant mind often scans for signs of losing freedom, signs of losing control, signs of being overwhelmed, signs of being emotionally consumed. The moment those signals appear, protective behaviors become active. That does not mean they stop caring. It means their nervous system has shifted into self-protection mode. When someone offers patience instead of pressure, something important happens. The nervous system begins to relax. The sense of threat begins to decrease. Defensive walls become less necessary. This is one reason avoidants often reconnect after periods of space. Many people think the space itself creates distance. In reality, healthy space often allows avoidants to reconnect with their own emotions. When pressure disappears, they can think more clearly. When expectations soften, they can feel more honestly. When urgency fades, they can move toward connection naturally. This creates a surprising truth. Sometimes the fastest way to lose an avoidant is to rush them. And sometimes the fastest way to gain their trust is to stop rushing them. Trust develops differently for avoidants. For many people, trust grows through emotional intensity. For avoidants, trust often grows through emotional consistency. They pay attention to whether people respect boundaries. They notice whether others become controlling under stress. They observe whether affection comes with hidden demands. They watch carefully to see if closeness feels safe. Patience answers these questions without words. Every time someone remains calm instead of demanding. Every time someone respects boundaries instead of pushing through them. Every time someone allows space without punishment, trust quietly grows. And trust is one of the rare things that can gradually lower an avoidant's defenses. This naturally brings us to the third set of words, 3 words that often reach an avoidant at a level deeper than most people expect. I'm still here. These words carry a kind of emotional power that many avoidants rarely experience, not because the words themselves are extraordinary, but because of what they represent: consistency, reliability, stability. Many avoidants secretly expect relationships to become painful sooner or later. Some expect criticism, some expect disappointment, some expect rejection. Others expect people to leave once they see their imperfections. Even when these expectations are not conscious, they can influence how avoidants approach relationships. Deep down, many avoidants are waiting for the moment when connection becomes unsafe. The moment when demands become overwhelming. The moment when acceptance disappears. The moment when someone decides they are too difficult to love. Because of these expectations, avoidants often become highly aware of changes in behavior. They notice inconsistency. They notice emotional volatility. They notice when affection appears and disappears unpredictably. This can reinforce old beliefs that relationships are unstable, that people eventually leave, that emotional safety cannot be trusted. This is why the words "I'm still here" can carry such weight. Those words communicate something far more powerful than pursuit. They communicate presence. There is an important difference between chasing someone and remaining present. Chasing often creates pressure. Presence creates safety. Chasing says, "Respond the way I want." Presence says, "I am here." Chasing demands movement. Presence offers stability. Avoidants often respond much better to stability than intensity. Intense emotions can feel overwhelming. Consistent behavior feels predictable. And predictability creates safety. When someone repeatedly demonstrates reliability, old expectations begin to weaken. The avoidant starts noticing that not everyone leaves, not everyone criticizes, not everyone demands endless emotional performance. Not everyone turns love into pressure. These realizations may develop slowly, sometimes very slowly, but they can be deeply transformative. Because consistency challenges beliefs that may have existed for years. Every reliable action sends a message. Every calm response sends a message. Every moment of steady presence sends a message. The message is simple. You do not have to protect yourself all the time. For many avoidants, that message is incredibly healing, not because it instantly changes them, not because it removes all fears, but because it creates a new emotional experience. An experience where connection feels safer than expected. An experience where closeness does not automatically lead to pressure. An experience where acceptance remains even when vulnerability appears. When we step back and look at all 3 phrases together, a clear pattern begins to emerge. I understand you. Take your time. I'm still here. At first glance, they seem completely different. One focuses on understanding. One focuses on patience, one focuses on consistency. Yet beneath the surface, they all communicate the same thing: safety. Understanding creates emotional safety because the avoidant feels seen rather than judged. Patience creates emotional safety because the avoidant feels free rather than pressured. Consistency creates emotional safety because the avoidant feels secure rather than abandoned. And this is where one of the most misunderstood truths about avoidant psychology begins to reveal itself. Many people believe avoidants need more love, more reassurance, more persuasion, more emotional intensity. But often what they need first is safety, because when safety appears, defenses become less necessary. When defenses become less necessary, trust begins to grow. When trust begins to grow, emotions that were hidden for years can finally start moving closer to the surface. And once that process begins, the entire experience of connection starts to change in ways that many people never expect. As we reach the end of this discussion, one truth stands out above everything else. The biggest mistake people make when dealing with avoidance is believing that more pressure will create more closeness, more convincing, more chasing, more demands for reassurance. more attempts to force emotional openness. It seems logical on the surface, but avoidant psychology often works very differently. The harder someone pushes, the stronger an avoidant's defenses can become. Not because they do not care, not because they are incapable of love, but because pressure activates the very fears they have spent years trying to manage. Deep down, many avoidants are not protecting themselves from love. They are protecting themselves from feeling overwhelmed, controlled, misunderstood, or emotionally unsafe. That is why the 3 phrases we explored today are so powerful. I understand you, take your time, I'm still here. None of these phrases demand anything. None of them force vulnerability. None of them create pressure. Instead, they offer something far more valuable. They offer emotional safety. They communicate acceptance instead of judgment, patience instead of urgency, consistency instead of uncertainty. And for someone with avoidant tendencies, those experiences can reach places that ordinary expressions of love sometimes cannot. The reality is that walls rarely come down because someone pushes harder. They come down because someone feels safe enough to stop holding them up. That process does not happen overnight. It is not quick. It is not perfect. There may still be moments of distance, hesitation, and fear. But when an avoidant feels understood rather than criticized, respected rather than pressured, and accepted rather than controlled, something begins to change. Slowly, trust starts to grow. Slowly, fear starts to loosen its grip. Slowly, the connection that once felt threatening begins to feel safe. And perhaps that is the hidden lesson behind avoidant psychology. Sometimes the deepest emotional impact does not come from saying more. It comes from creating an environment where someone no longer feels the need to protect themselves from what they feel. Now we would love to hear from you. Have you ever known an avoidant who responded more strongly to understanding than affection? Which of these 3 phrases do you think would have the greatest impact on an avoidant heart? I understand you, take your time, or I'm still here. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story may help someone else better understand themselves, or a relationship they are struggling to make sense of. If you found this video helpful and enjoy learning about psychology, attachment styles, emotional intelligence, relationships, and human behavior, make sure to give this video a like. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our future videos. And if you know someone who is trying to understand an avoidant partner, a friend, a family member, or even themselves, share this video with them. It could provide an insight they have been searching for. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this community. And until next time, keep exploring the deeper psychology behind human connection.